Have you ever felt like no matter how much you talk, you're just not being heard in your relationship? Or maybe you feel like every conversation turns into a battle, leaving you both more disconnected than before. Welcome to Love Shack Live, the podcast dedicated to helping you create meaningful and lasting connections in your relationship. I'm Staci Bartley, and I'm joined by my co-host and lover, Tom, and her daughter, Brooke. Together, we're here to guide you on your journey to love and understanding. Today, we're diving into a crucial question. How can we truly improve communication in our relationships? We'll uncover 4 powerful ways to enhance how you and your partner connect and understand each other in this episode. Also, I want you to know is a rebroadcast. And if you've listened before, you know the transformative insights we'll share here. And listening again can only reinforce these powerful concepts and offer new perspectives you may have missed the first time around. If this is your first time tuning in, first of all, thank you so much. You're in for a real treat. It's time that you discover why communication isn't just about talking. It's about emotional regulation and active listening, crucial skills for any relationship, especially in times of emotional distance and challenge. So I want to share with you before we start the episode, 4 years ago, we conducted surveys with over 2,000 couples, and communication was cited number 1, the biggest obstacles that couples felt like they were challenged with. But here's the deal. It's not just about talking. Our biggest issues actually are our inability to emotionally regulate. I can give you the best communication frameworks on the planet. I have many of them. But when your emotional back is pressed against the wall, you're going to throw them out. And you're going to do what you've always done because the emotion becomes so overwhelming and intense. We become emotionally triggered. So today we're going to explore these 4 powerful ways to improve your communication. And let me share the first tip right now with you, active listening. And you're probably going, oh, yeah, right. Okay. Is that all you're going to give me when I listen to this episode? No, actually, don't let the name fool you. It may sound simple, but I need you to understand and know that as human beings, it's incredibly difficult. Because of our emotional responses, when somebody says something that we feel like we react to, that we need to correct the narrative, that we need to jump in and overstate. So stay with me, because if you do, you're going to understand that this is probably the piece you've been missing. This is the part that's going to help you create the connection with your partner now. So whether you're revisiting this episode or tuning in for the first time, you're going to discover practical, actionable steps to improve your relationship starting today. Let's dive in and transform the way we communicate and connect right now.
Hey, thank you for coming. Welcome to the Love Shack.
The very first tip that I want to talk about today. Number 1, it's active listening. And now before you roll your eyes and go, really, that's all you got for me? Hold on a minute, okay? Just slow your roll for a second and hear me out. The reason why listening is so hard is that emotional regulation that I talked about just a few seconds ago. The minute we start hearing words and phrases that plug us in and spike our emotions is the minute we stop listening. So instead of listening for understanding, we start running our mouth in defense. It's just how it works. And so making you aware of this, I hope, will help you understand how important active listening is. It really is the hardest part of communication because we can get plugged in so easily. And then our heads, our minds, our brains are thinking about what I'm going to say and how I'm going to defend myself than actually truly listening and hearing you out. Maybe you did it when I said, number 1, active listening. And all of a sudden you go, whatever. This is all you got. We do it as human beings all the time.
Well, and I think it's really important. Your number 1 tip is listening. And I think most of us, me included, when we hear communication, it's about talking, right?
I was just going to say that same exact thing. I think other people will say, no, the thing I need in this episode is that me and my spouse never talk to each other. So how am I supposed to listen if he's not talking? And the thing is he's or she is probably not talking because you don't active listen. All you do is defend yourself to them. And that is not active listening.
Exactly. I love that you pointed that out because talking is the easy part.
Right.
And it's hard to stop talking sometimes when you get plugged in. So that's why listening is the harder part of the exchange and communication. There's two parts, the listener and the sharer, and where it tends to go haywire and why it is you find yourself talking about everything and plus the kitchen sink when you sit down to have a conversation about money, kids, or the fight that we had last night is because everybody is pinging with and reacting to what's being said. And then we're drawing out evidence to support my statement. And literally what's happening is we're saying, I'll listen to you after you listen to me. And you're like, screw you. You listen to me first and then I'll listen to you. And nobody's listening at all. And it goes back and forth. And we spiral into these cycles of fighting and can't seem to get out of them. Again, it's because nobody's listening. So when you're having a conversation and you need it to go well, the number one skill that I can give you is to listen. Like resist the temptation for your brain to start pinging around, coming up with your defense, and give your partner your full attention. I'm going to also suggest that if this is difficult for you, which it probably is going to be in the beginning, get yourself out a little pad of paper and a pen. And when you're listening and something gets fired off, just go ahead and write it down on the piece of paper and then come back to listening and resist the temptation to jump in, to interrupt, to talk over, to essentially lose your composure, which is that emotional push-up. That's what I call it, that emotional regulation or that ability to do an emotional push-up. Just hold it for a moment. And then when the communication switches, you can go to your list and you haven't lost anything. You can go ahead and just pick up where you wanted to speak.
Active listening is a very big part of creating emotional safety in relationships, which we've done a podcast on recently. I'll link it in the description. For the people who are coming to this episode saying, great, this is going to help me get my partner talk more, and they're frustrated because we're talking about listening, this step is imperative that you master. So don't write it off and say, oh, I don't need this part because we don't talk in our marriage. Because I did this in some of my past relationships where I made it totally unsafe for my partner to share their thoughts with me because I did not active listen, and all I did was berate them for having the thoughts and feelings that they had and made them wrong. How could they say that? Or how could you think that? Do an honest assessment. And if that's how you're presenting in your relationship, then why would your partner want to talk to you? And I'm not trying to make you feel bad, or I'm not trying to say that you're a terrible person, but this is just a very common place we go in our relationships where we make it impossible for our partner to talk with us without giving them a terrible treatment for everything that they've just said. So of course they're not going to talk. Of course communication is not going to happen. So this really is the first step that you have to take for communication to even be possible in your relationship.
It is the place where communication breaks down right here, is nobody's listening and everybody has something to say and everybody wants to be heard. And so that's literally what we're fighting for. And then we're going to gather evidence to support the reason why you should listen to me now. And everybody feels more and more negated and less understood. And I just want to point out here that the goal of communication truly is to understand. Like that's a hard period, especially when we're talking about matters of the heart. It's more about understanding yourself and understanding your partner than it is anything else. Because once you get to a place of understanding, there's going to be a tremendous amount of relief that happens just from that simple act. And we've not changed anything. We've not solved any of our big major problems, but now everybody feels better because you feel heard, even if I disagree with you. And so that literally is the pursuit in our communication. And there's no way we can arrive at the important aspect of understanding if we're not listening. And all we're doing is talking. And we need to do less talking and more listening, especially when it counts the most. Not fight more, not run your mouth more, not come up with more evidence, not step into defensiveness, not do the blame thing. Not diagnose somebody, label somebody, leverage and manipulate, rally the troops and say, everybody says this. It's letting all of that go and truly saying, help me understand where you're at and what is going on for you. And I promise I'm going to shut my mouth and listen. I'm going to wrap my head around this. That would be the number one thing you can do.
We've had my brother David on our show, and he was in our men's group last month and said, and we've heard David say this before, people, they're not looking for your advice. They simply want you to hear them most times. Yeah. And if they do, they'll ask for the advice.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Navigating the silent, complex moments of separation or your partner's need for space can feel like walking through a maze without a map. If this sounds familiar, know that you are not alone. This journey, filled with uncertainties and introspection, requires a gentle, understanding guide. Hey, I'm Brooke from Love Shack Live. We see you, and more importantly, we get it. That's why we created the Separation Support Bundle, a collection of resources designed to not just guide you through separation, but to offer comfort and clarity during these times. Our separation guide offers insights and support to help make sense of your emotions and the process of separation. And for those moments when words escape you, our guide on 10 texts to send when navigating space provides thoughtful prompts to help communicate with compassion. Plus, a soothing separation meditation to help ease the overwhelming moments. Because sometimes all we need is a starting point, or a way to start feeling okay again. Remember, you don't have to journey through these complexities of separation alone. Our Separation Support Bundle is here to accompany you, guiding you towards healing, understanding, and most importantly, the renewed sense of self. Visit stacibartley.com/bundle today to access your free separation support bundle. At Love Shack Live, we're all about exploring the real stuff that relationships bring, the good and the challenging. So let's tackle this together, because even in the hardest times, there's hope, growth, and yes, even love to be found.
Advice.
Yeah.
Remember that? I said, well, that's a good one, you know?
And this brings us to step number 2, because what we're after is this validation that you hear me, that you get me, that you understand me. That's what we're all seeking internally, emotionally, because here's the thing. If you hear me, that's how I know you care about me. You want me. And that's where the conversation can go sideways really quickly. If you're dismissing me, talking over me, labeling me, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go to, you don't love me. You don't care about me. You don't want this relationship. I'm giving up. I'm shutting down now. Why does it all matter? And I'm either going to stop talking. I'm going to stop talking altogether, or I'm going to get exceptionally demonstrative and I'm going to attack you because I'm sick and tired of not being heard and I don't know how else to get it. So this emotional validation, number 2, is very important when we are listening and we're trying to improve our communication. It's literally acknowledging what your partner is thinking and feeling as they're sharing it with you. And this can be done through body language, personal cues of, hey, I heard you, or tell me more about this. I don't really quite understand where you're coming from here. Will you elaborate a little more? And even if it's difficult for you to hear, something along the lines of, man, this is really difficult for me to hear. Let me just take a breath here and come back to the listening because I feel like this is something I really need to understand. As I like to say as a demonstration, often, if Tom tells me I'm verbally abusive, what can I do with that? That would be really hard for me to hear. Number 1, it's going to fire my emotions off. Absolutely. And if I attack, which I'm probably, if I don't regulate myself, going to do, it's going to sound a lot like, man, I can't believe you'd say that to me. I'm verbally attacking. What about all the times you do it? What about all this time and this time and this time and this time? What have I accomplished towards pursuit of understanding in my communication? All I'm going to do is turn that into a fight. Instead, I might say something like, oh man, that hurts. You think I'm verbally abusive? Okay, let me just take a breath here and contemplate that for a moment. And then I'm going to say, tell me how it is you feel I'm verbally abusive, because that's not my intention at all. But I'd better understand how it is I'm coming off that way, if not because I need to prove that I'm right or I'm wrong, but because if this is the dynamic that's playing out in our relationship, wouldn't it behoove me to know how this is happening, that Tom is actually coming to the conclusion that I'm verbally abusive? That's going to be the only way I can work with it. So I can shut it down and I can attack it, which is going to continue the cycle. It's going to continue the fighting. He's going to stack on more and more evidence that I am verbally abusive as I'm more and more attacking. I mean, I am kind of coming off verbally abusive now at this point, and it's not going to help us change the behavior. He is experiencing me as being verbally abusive, whether it's true or it's not true.
Well, what you just demonstrated is, and you hear this a lot if you've listened to us or watched us, is you've turned into a version of what you're just potentially denying, right? You're demonstrating in a pretty intense way that, gosh, gosh, it seems like you're pretty intense and abusing me now by sharing with that I'm feeling abused by, you know what I mean? So it's interesting how we can so quickly get into some version of what it is we're fighting against.
The defensive.
The key here is that, well, there's two. Number one is that if your partner is telling you something that they don't like that you're doing, number one, it doesn't mean that you are that. Like, you don't have to then say, okay, I'm a verbally abusive person. You don't have to take on that label and say, okay, that's what I am. You can just decide to change the behavior that they're identifying as verbally abusive in their own minds. You can change that behavior, but that doesn't mean that you're a terrible person or any of those things. Because that's why we defend ourselves. Defend ourselves because we're like, no, at the core, I'm not a verbally abusive person, so you must be wrong. Two things can be true. That one specific thing you're doing can be verbally abusive behavior, but it also doesn't mean that you're terrible and you need to go to jail for being an abusive person. Number two is that if your partner is telling you something that is hurting them, and instead of wanting to understand why that's hurting them or what it feels like for them to have that happen, and instead the only thing you want to do is defend yourself and tell them how wrong they are, look at that for a second, because you're not allowing your person to share their feelings with you. And you're saying, no, I'm not willing to make this relational experience better for you. I want you to continue hurting because I can't hear that you think this about me. Because the truth is, it's not about you in this instance. It's about them and how they're feeling. So you correcting your behavior is validating them, but it also doesn't mean that you have to think the same thing. We get so mired in that. No, I'm not a terrible person, so this can't be true. But if you're stuck in that way of thinking, then you're refusing to acknowledge how your partner feels.
Well,
you know,
I just want to stack on that, if I may, because what we interpret as verbally abusive or defensive or controlling, etc., can be a myriad of things. It's no one thing. And so, as a mentor once said to me, pay attention to the ones that punch you in the gut, because those are probably the things you need to look at, and let the rest of it blow by. And what plugs you in is going to be a variety of different things for different people. And so there might even be, in this example that I'm going to stay with, verbally abusive, there might be a phraseology or a word that could potentially fire my person off. And all of a sudden they travel back in time to a place where that was used as an abusive technique in the families of origin that they were growing up in, or with some kind of an interaction with a friend or family member, and it gets registered in our brain emotionally as something that's abusive. And so if I'm not willing to explore how it is I'm coming off as verbally abusive in our communication, well, then all of a sudden I'm going to miss understanding what fires my partner off or Tom off, and B, there is no way we're going to change the dynamic in this co-creation between us for the better. And it doesn't mean I'm verbally abusive just because somebody said so, just like you said. What it means is there's phrases, there's body language, there's tonality, there's a lot of things that are firing off for my partner that are causing them to come to the summation that I am verbally abusive. I want to understand that, especially if I feel like I'm not verbally abusive. Like, how is this happening?
And just to stack one more, we have just so clearly identified it's the personal movie framework that we talk about often, meaning there can be all kinds of stimuli that all of us navigate every day, and there's a myriad of many different responses to that. That's the absolute confirmation that we all have different experiences to the same stimuli. Okay. So that's important for us to remember. Like Brooke said, doesn't mean that you're that, but you're coming off that way or you're occurring that way for your special someone. It doesn't, who cares? If we're really wanting to understand and be more connected, intimacy into the all of you I see and vice versa, well, then you're in a much different movie than me. Yeah, no kidding. That sounds like it's a freaking horror picture. Yeah, no kidding. So, well, let's remedy that, right? I mean, let's remember we're all at our own, and all 7.5 billion of us on this planet. So there's a lot to understand.
Yeah. And if we add just one more piece, you can tell we're passionate about this one, because this is the biggie. This is the biggie. This is where we all get lost. And even I can get lost
included.
Sometimes, you know, because we're on this human journey right along with you. I was going to take it physical. Maybe if we could understand that if you wanted to dress in a way that really pleased your partner, if you wanted to put on a beautiful outfit, or your handsome man wanted to put on something that was really attractive for his partner, man or woman, you would need to inquire with your person. I might have my favorite outfit and the way I would like to see things happen. But if I'm looking to co-create or create an experience with my person, putting this into the physical realm, then I'm going to say, hey, what would you like me to wear out tonight? I want to please you. And this is where we're talking about comes into play. If we want to please our partners and give them a safe place to co-create with us in our relationships, then what fires them off needs to be understood. And that's no different than what pleases them visually or intimately is something we need to understand and know. And this is in that same realm of understanding my partner, what makes them tick, what fires them off, what arouses them. I want to know those things, and I'm not going to be able to guess or tell them what it is. It's something that needs to come from them. And so often we take these things really personal when they come to the emotional nature, and we're not so good about saying them. We're not so good about communicating them because we haven't been given a lot of skills and communication frameworks and understanding to understand the language of love to such a degree we can say it. And we don't understand that what I might say might fire somebody off for reasons that don't make any sense to me. And that's human. Then we're back to the races. So this emotional validation piece is really important. You're basically just saying, okay, let me understand. Let me not attack. Let me not shut down. Let me do my best to stay present and understand where you're really coming from so that maybe we can take a crack at deciding what we can do to change this experience for the two of us in this co-creation called a relationship. A couple of other super tips I want to give you around emotional validation is don't talk for someone. Do not talk over someone. Do not talk for them. If you don't give them a place to express themselves, there's no way they're going to feel emotionally validated, seen, and heard. You've lost them. So many times when we get fired off, no, that's not the way it happened. No, you can't say it like that. No, that is not how you feel. That is not what happened. Or no, see, this is where you turn into a narcissist. And I'm literally interrupting the conversation, and I'm going to disrupt the understanding. I'm also going to disrupt the safety. And now we're either going to fight or the conversation's going to be done. You're over.
Would that be a place then instead of that would be genuine, curious questions to help you better understand what it is that's troubling or painful for your partner?
Yes. And just realize because of what we just mentioned a few minutes ago about everybody has the things that work for them and it may not make any sense to you. When you do this, at best, you're guessing and you're also preventing them from being able to emotionally digest and validate themselves. It's through the talking. Sometimes I just need to know I said it, and you're preventing that from happening. Even if you do know, let them say it because you're supporting them in the conversation, and you're creating a lot of things you need, like emotional safety to share. And then best case scenario, you're just going to validate what you already heard or what you've already known anyway. So everybody wins in that scenario. If you jump in and say it for them or cut them off, now you're in a race to the bottom and there's no winners there in the communication. Second piece I'm going to give you is when it comes to the sharing, realize that communication is a sharing and a listening component. When I'm in the sharing role, I need to be mindful of owning how I think and feel. Just because my partner is the person hanging around when we were having a conversation and I had some thoughts and feelings that came up for me does not mean it's their fault. If you're the one feeling it, then it's a message for you, and it's something that you need to find the remedies for and the ability to express. We can't blame the person who's firing these things off. And yes, everybody's going to go, yeah, but maybe they're intentionally doing it. Yeah, that's true. But you know how small of a percentage that is when we're really working on our relationship to improve it? It's very small. If we're talking, that's a completely different conversation about emotional manipulation and leveraging and control. Yes, that happens. But if I'm genuinely trying to take a stab at having a productive conversation, I really am doing my best. So give me the benefit of the doubt for a minute so we can make some progress here. Okay. Just suspend your disbelief for a moment and give it a try would be my recommendation there. Again, if you're the one feeling it, it's a message for you. So let's move on to number 3, which is sincerely asked questions are the powerhouse of communication. Yes, indeed they are, because here's what questions can do for you. They provide you with an opportunity to invite someone into the conversation. An example of this is you look upset. Would you be willing to share with me what's coming up for you? Question on the end is the invitation in. Instead of saying what we would typically do, which is, oh, you're upset again? Are you upset? Are you going to tell me about it this time? That's a statement. That's not a question. So questions sincerely asked are invitations into a conversation. We could be having a conversation and a dialogue about a myriad of things. And if I wanted to know and understand or invite you into what it is I was sharing, I share. And then I say, what comes up for you about that? Is there any thoughts and feelings that are coming up for you that you want to share with me at this point in time? Or I would love to know what's going on for you now. Would you be willing to share it? Those are great examples of putting a question on the end of a statement, and they become an invitation into the conversation.
Yeah. And those are open-ended, and those are beautiful because only the person that you're asking knows the answer. You don't know the answer. So it's going to also help us stay present and listen because we don't know the answer. Powerful coaches, the best ones in the world, and whatever their area of expertise is in their mastery, are the ones, in my humble opinion, that ask the greatest questions that are open-ended of their person they're working with. They're masters at it.
Well, remember, what's our pursuit in communication? Understanding. So if you don't have your person sharing their thoughts and feelings, they're not going to understand. You're not going to seek that understanding. Now, listen, understanding happens when I share me with you and when I listen to when you share with me. That creates the understanding we need. It really doesn't matter what the circumstances are that we're trying to solve and understand. What we're really wanting is the way that those circumstances made me feel. Those are the things that we're after and that we're pursuing in the level of understanding, instead of me just firing off what I believe to be true when a myriad of things happen. We can get to what the other person was thinking and what it is they were feeling at the time this went down. And that's going to tell us a lot more about where we need to go from here than arguing about how they dressed the child or how they took the trash out or why they didn't get to dinner or why they're sitting on the couch and I think they should be helping, or why you spent the money, or these are the circumstances and what was driving that emotionally underneath the surface, or how did those experiences and circumstances cause you to feel? That's what we want to understand. That's the understanding that we're pursuing. And questions help us get to the heart of the matter in a way that we don't sacrifice the safety by attacking or shutting down or leveraging the situation altogether. It also is going to help you create remedies for what it is you want to do or try new in the relationship, as far as, okay, we've got the understanding. Now what do we want to do with it? This is where we can say, I'd like to toss in a few ideas. Would you mind? Or I'd like to know what you're thinking right now. Would you share? There's an invitation to lay ideas and strategies and remedies on the table for what we could try next. This is also really helpful when we're putting together agreements, right? I'd like to agree to this. Would that work for you? There's that question again. I'm feeling really upset about what's being talked about right now. Would you give me a minute so that I can just collect myself? I'm asking for help and support. I'm willing to be open to giving help and support so that we can achieve our goal of communication. And that's why questions become the powerhouse of communication, to help us create that ebb and flow. Anything you guys want to add about that?
No, I mean, and I think this is a tip or strategy that most of us don't know or haven't had a lot of time practicing. And when you're good with this, it's unbelievable how effective it can be and how much what it provides to your special someone. If you're on the opposite end, it makes you so validated that you would take the time to ask me that quality of a question that only I know about. To me, that's like your greatest demonstration that you're really, and as my brother would say, then that would lead to an experience of connection. When we feel like we're being asked in a genuine manner, we're going to feel more, I would say, much more connected to whomever is asking that question, right?
We don't think to ask a question. We don't realize how powerful they are, number one. And number two, they create a lot of anxiety in us, especially if we're the ones asking the question, because do you really want the answer? Do you really want to know what they're thinking and feeling? It would behoove you to, but we negate the importance of that because we can get so lost in, all of us can, it's all about me and what I'm feeling, and I'm trying to ease my pain, and so is the other person. And so it's like this idea of, look, everybody's needs can be met. It doesn't have to be at the exception of one or the other. It's give first and give fast, because if I get to a place where I can give you the understanding first, then you're going to be more open to understanding me. Right. And we can both get our needs met here. Asking a question is a great way. And then you've got to do that emotional validation, that push-up piece, because you might hear some things that you find difficult to hear, but better you hear them and understand them and ask questions about them so that we can change the trajectory of where we're going. Otherwise, we're just going to continue in our pursuit to the race to the bottom. Those are literally your two choices. I know I've shared this recently on one of our podcasts, but I think it behooves us to share it. It wasn't all that long ago where I was a hot mess and I shut the conversation down with Tom. And in about 2 minutes, I recognized what I had done, right? I was plugged in. I I didn't want to give airtime. I wasn't in a place to listen. I was literally taking my emotional anxiety and upset out on him. And so I needed to come back and clean that up as a do-over really quickly. So if you find yourself in that place where you're like, crap, I just did it. I attacked him. I shut the conversation down. I overtalked. Just own it in a nanosecond and create a do-over. You know what? I'm sorry. I'm noticing I talked over you. I'm noticing I just lost it there for a minute. Let me regather. And then would you be willing to continue the conversation? There's that question again, right? So you can clean it up quickly right now. Don't let it linger. Don't defend what it is you've just done. See it, note it, express it, and say, let's come back around. I'm sorry for that part. I'm trying to get better at this. Let's work together at this. And that starts to create a safe place to get better at communication. Questions are very helpful ways to do that. So let's jump into the surprise technique that
I have no idea what this one's going to be.
Well,
Do you, Brooke?
No, this is the surprising one. I'm going to invite you to create a code word or a phrase, because one of the most difficult things to do when everybody starts to get fired up is to pause. And yet it can be a lifesaver. There is no point in continuing when everybody is fired up. And we all know this. We can all see that the more we fight, there's not one person or both of you that goes, aha, I see the light. I finally understand where you're coming from. Like, it never happens, and it won't happen. And we can count on that being the case every single time. And yet we continue to buy into the illusion that if I just say this one more point, or if I point out one more flaw and why you're the reason to blame, that we're going to have this epic moment of, oh, you're right. That's such a great point. No, you're not. That won't happen unless you're in what I call a neutral place, where we have the ability to emotionally regulate ourselves. And so it's okay if you get spun up and you find that you're not in that space anymore. Just own it. And the two of you can come up with a code word or a phrase to remind you of a couple of things. Number one, I care about you. The reason why I'm so spun up is because I care about this relationship and I care about you and I want it to go well. Otherwise, I wouldn't be so spun up. And how quickly, my friends, we forget when we are spinning up and we are plugged in. I forget that I care. In fact, I start coming up with a rationale that entitles me to say and do all kinds of terrible things to you. The person I say I love because you said or did these things to me. And now we're to that race to the bottom again. A word that helps remind both of you that, oh, wait a minute. We like being in this relationship. We like each other. We want this to go better. We want to improve this. I care. We forget really quickly. So that word or phrase needs to remind you that I care. Number two, to not take things so seriously, that there's plenty of time to gain the understanding that we're lacking right now. And it doesn't have to be done in one conversation. We can do it in many conversations. Sometimes in big, serious issues, it might take us 50 rounds of coming back through this again and again and again in the pursuit of understanding before we arrive at some place we need to or can change, a different direction that we can go. Take the 50 rounds, because here's what I know to be true. Each and every round and pass that you do pursuing that state of neutrality and understanding will shed more and more understanding on the situation, which is just going to help us finally arrive at the place we need to go. So take the 50.
So I have a question. So on this code, say if things are escalating, it's not going well, then would I verbalize that code to you?
Yep. So come up with this word or this phrase before you're in an escalated state, while you're in a good space. That's important. And again, you want it to remind you that you care and that this is a time for a pause. We need to pause because we want this to go.
I would also just quickly say maybe it should be something funny and random, like hot dog. Yeah. So that when you say it, it seems like absurd and you both could take a second and laugh, you know?
So it really reset the vibration and energy of the situation. No, I think that's a good,
yeah. Some couples, you need to come up with a word that resonates with the two of you that communicates, we need to pause because we want this to go well. And I care. And yeah, humor is often a great interrupter, but so is, hey, cuddle, or hey, lovemaking, or hey, flower. I mean, something that evokes, or children. And that might be the key word because we want this to go well for ourselves and our family, right? So find a word that's humorous, random, or find a word that takes you to that heart space. Find what works for you.
I would say whatever, have it be effective. Meaning, so just whatever's going to reset it quickly, because that's the whole point. Super tip is to quickly reset and get you both out of your funk.
Oh, one that I use often with Tom is, you're so sexy. You're so sexy. And he'll go, oh, stop it. I know what you're doing. I know, but it works. And then it's like everybody can just exhale. So just find one that works for the two of you. Talk about it, dialogue about it, and don't be afraid to play around with it. Like, you can change the word once you've come up with the word. If you're in the heat of the moment, it didn't work. Acknowledge it didn't work. Let's find another word.
Right.
It didn't take me to that emotional place where I can get off it. So spend some time and perfect something that then becomes a very powerful tool in improving your communication. So that's it. We've got number one, just to recap here. Number one, active listening. That's so important. Yeah, we talk about it. Yeah. We give it a lot of mouth time, but give it airtime. That's what's important here. We need to listen more and talk less to improve our communication. And then that emotional validation, tip 2, that's important. You're going to hear some things that you don't want to hear, but your options are I either understand it so we can improve it, or I shut the conversation down and we're just going to fight about it again and again and again and again.
And I would just say, just remember, it doesn't matter if that is similar for you. Let go of all that. It doesn't matter. Again, that's not even in the equation. Who cares? Gosh,
Well, I think Brooke
rather
said-
like that's the most ridiculous thing. I would never feel like that.
Like Brooke said, it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about understanding what's going on for your partner
Right.
in that moment. And it would behoove everybody to be able to, 1, express it, and 2, understand it. Doesn't mean you are it.
Right.
It just means this is something that's throwing a wrench in what it is you say you want. So let's understand it and decide how to better dance with it. And then number 3, sincerely asked questions are the powerhouse of communication. They allow you to invite your partner into a conversation. They also allow you to understand more, go deeper in a conversation. Please help me understand more about that. That's not making a lot of sense. Would you please share more? Tell me more. Would you please? Those are all really great uses of a question that's sincerely asked. And then the surprise technique that we shared with you, come up with a code word or a phrase that emotionally helps you get off it, because we know that continuing in the escalation of a fight is not going to improve our communication. You're not going to see the light at the end of the day. What's going to happen is you're going to shut the conversation down more, and you're going to diminish, more importantly, the emotional safety to share over and over and over again until it's non-existent. And my friends, if you don't understand much about emotional safety, you need to understand if it's not emotionally safe, nobody's going to share anything with you. I don't care how compelling your evidence or encouragement is to say something. I will not. I will give you a play cake surface answer, but the opportunity for you to truly understand me is gone. So if you're having problems with emotional safety, which is where great communication needs to begin, then you got to check out that episode we did on emotional safety, and it will walk you right through it. So I think that's it for today. Anything you guys want to add?
I mean, these are huge, if you will, and hopefully you can use these and put them into your situation, your relationship quickly enough.
I just wanted to say for all the people who, like I said in the beginning, who are like, no, our problem is that we never talk to each other. This is why. So now that you've heard all these reasons, if you don't have the permission and safety to talk about the big things, then the little things also are not talked about either. One or both of you shuts down and all communication stops. And then the only things you're talking about are the things you have to talk about. Did you take the trash out? Can you pick the kids up on Friday? That's what happens. It's not that you and your partner fall out of love or you just suddenly become incompatible. It's that there's a slow breakdown where there's no emotional safety and these communication skills are not happening, where you're not giving emotional validation, you're not active listening, you're not asking questions, and you don't have a code word. So there's nothing being talked about. So it's not that you run out of things to talk about. It's that the way you talk about things are not healthy. So this is the answer to that question.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are in a place where communication is not happening at all, start with emotional safety. And then as you build the emotional safety, implement the things that we've talked about in this episode today.
Also, if you are struggling, we invite you to join the Better Love Club, and you can go to thebetterloveclub.com and look at all the details. And if you would like to test us out for a Monday night class, you can do that it's $35 to test us out for a Monday night class. We'll then apply that to your first month of the Better Love Club monthly payments. And you can do that by emailing us at love@stacibartley.com, and we'll make it really easy and simple for you to join us for the next Monday night.
Yeah, we just had some listeners that listened to that and they joined us on a Monday night and now they're members. So it's just come in and test us. And guess what? If you don't feel like it was a positive experience, you didn't like it, we'll refund your $35 investment. So there is no risk.
There's no risk.
No risk.
Yeah.
But try it. Before you say you don't like it or you could never do that, to be fair, you've never experienced it. So at least experience it and then let us know.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. We've got a whole pillar dedicated to communication here. My greatest advice to you is if you're in a place where the communication is not going well and it's shut down, don't wait, because it's not going to improve. The way to improve relationships is through the lens of communication. That's why all 2,000 participants said our biggest problem is communication. Yeah, you're right, but not for the reasons you think. There's other components that go into just forcing yourself or your partner to talk, as we've highlighted here today. And there's many, many nuances beyond this when we get masterful at the things we've talked about. This is the basics. And then we can start stacking on how you say it and the frameworks necessary to organize what you need to say in a way that it can be heard. But we can't even go there until we get some of these basic things foundationally implemented into your relationship. So reach out to us, get some help, and get some support. We would love to be that place of refuge for you to help you improve your relationship. You deserve that. You absolutely do. All right, let's have a little bit of fun. We promise that in each and every episode. And what we mean by fun is just switching it up a little bit. Give yourself something that you can do where you put your problems on the shelf and you remember and remind yourself, I like this person. I like being around this person. We can create some moments that impact us positively, even though we're going through a challenging time. And so I'm going to take you back in today's Follow the Fun moment to a place where maybe you were in first or second grade and you had this little thing called show and tell.
Oh boy.
Wow. For most of us, it evokes this emotional response of, wow, yeah.
When you bring it, you'd bring it like in a little special box, right?
Yeah,
So
we just brought in a paper bag back.
I remember like a little special box, which is, I don't remember that really. You were really excited. And didn't we think certain days little Johnny's turn was show and tell, and then it was Freddie's and Joey's.
Yeah. There, you had 2 or 3 people that would bring in their special little thing that they had selected to share with the class. And do you remember when it was your turn?
Oh, yeah.
Like how much thought and care you'd put into what you were going to actually spring on somebody. And it was always something that was really important and valuable to you.
That's why you put it in a special box.
Yes. And I remember I'm going to share one of my daughter Brill's. She had this epic fishing trip with her dad, and she was so proud of her fish that she decided to take her frozen fish to show and tell. And unfortunately, before they could get to the show and tell, it had melted in her backpack and it started to smell. Unfortunately, show and tell that day was later in the afternoon and not in the morning.
Dang it.
And you remember being on the receiving side, right? What are they going to show us? And what is it going to be? And where is it going to take us?
Smelly fish.
Yeah, that day it took us to smelly fish. I want you to know that this works for adults too. Like being able to share epic things that are important and valuable to us, evoke that same emotion, even though we're not in second grade anymore. We're adult. And so I want to invite you to pick out some photos or some videos of your favorite memories this week and have a show and tell in your own home. Share these things with each other and say, oh, this is the moment. Oh, I love this. You know what was going on for me? This is why I love this. This is why this is so valuable to me. Let me share with you something that is important and valuable to me, that means something to me. And then you give each other a turn to do that. 2, 3, 4 videos, however long you want to do some show and tell. Take an opportunity and create an opportunity for you to do a little show and tell over a wonderful meal. And that will create such a wonderful experience of connection and validation for each of you. It's going to take you back to second grade. I promise. It's going to put a smile on your face and make everybody feel really good about the opportunity to share these things with you. The song that I've selected for today's episode is a Kalina, or she has a song called Love Language, which I just thought was so appropriate for our episode on communication today. In her song, she talks about be patient with me. I want to be fluent in your love language and not get lost in the translation. And that really is the goal when it comes to communication. I can't say it enough. It's the pursuit, understanding not who's right and who's wrong and whose fault this is. That's where we go in our communication pursuits, is trying to figure out who's to blame for the challenges and the emotional experiences I'm having. And instead, we need to get fluent in each other's love language. Beyond physical touch, affection, those kinds of things, I need to get fluent in how you feel and where you go when X happens. That's my opportunity. And it's my opportunity to discover those things for myself. So you can listen to this week's song along with all of our entire playlist on our website, our podcast page, or you can find it on the Spotify playlist at Love Shack Live playlist. We just put this together for yet another added layer of experience. We want you to feel the conversation that we've attempted to have here with you today, as well as we just like music. So we want to be able to share that with you for a little bit of fun. All right. That's it for this week's episode of Love Shack Live. And if by chance you need help and support in your relationship, we would love for you to consider this a great place to begin the journey. And if you have a conversation you would like to have here inside of the Love Shack, we would love to hear from you. Don't hesitate to reach out, ask your questions, and engage with us. I promise we'll get back to you. It might take us a minute, but I promise We're very passionate about communicating with you. So just give us a few minutes to reply, and I promise you will. And listen, I'm going to invite you to also like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast for more information on relationship advice. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye-bye for now.
All right, it's time to leave the Love Shack. But before we part ways, we want you to know our door is always open, and we'll leave the porch light on, ready to welcome you back whenever you need a dose of relationship wisdom. For more resources and tools, visit us at loveshacklive.com to dive deeper into the topics we've explored and find additional support for your relationship journey. Stay connected by subscribing to our podcast. Thank you for being part of our Love Shack Live community.